Hello. Thank you for your interest in the Humanities Connections Grant Program offered by the National Endowment for the Humanities. My name is Hannah Schell, and I am a program officer in the Division of Education Programs and part of the leadership team for Humanities Connections. Joining me today is my colleague Sarah Booney, a program analyst in our division and another member of the Humanities Connections team. This webinar is recorded, obviously, and what we want to do is offer you an introduction to the Humanities Connections Grant Program. This is the first of two webinars. In the second one, we'll talk in a lot more detail about how to apply, and we'll offer some strategies for crafting the narrative portion of your application. But here in this sort of part one webinar, we just want to give you a sense of what this grant program is about so that you can begin thinking whether an initiative that you've maybe been pondering might fit with this grant program. We're going to cover that there's two levels of funding. We're going to give you some examples of projects that have been funded through this program. And then we'll just share some information about how to learn more, how to get input and feedback on your ideas at whatever stage, say a little bit about eligibility and funding restrictions, and then where to go next if you think you might want to pursue this. So here is a description of the purpose of the Humanities Connections program. We're looking for proposals that demonstrate and are seek to expand the role of the humanities, which is true for all of our grant programs. In particular, Humanities Connections is about partnerships between humanities faculty and their counterparts in other areas of study. The Humanities Connections awards support planning or implementation of curricular projects, which connect the humanities to, again, non-humanities disciplines. That might be the physical and natural sciences, it might be service or pre-professional programs, computer science, data science, etc. And projects are a collaboration between faculty from two or more departments or schools with a minimum of one in the humanities and one outside of the humanities. And we're looking for proposals that are offering a curricular structure that your institution could sustain over the long term. This might be interdisciplinary minors or certificates, curricular pathways such as concentrations within majors or general education programs, and other models that are appropriate to your institution and your context.
There are two levels of funding in the Humanities Connections Grant Program, and you'll want to begin thinking about which is the most appropriate for the project that you are envisioning on your campus. Projects at the planning level last for 1 year with a budget of up to $50,000. Those at the implementation level last up to 3 years with a budget of up to $150,000. We'll dive a little bit deeper on how you might decide which level to apply for, but knowing how much time and funding are available at each level should help you in determining which would be the best next step to take from where you and your institution are now and where you want to be.
So next, we want to give you more of a sense of what this grant program is about by looking at what sorts of initiatives it's funded. And so we're going to look at some broad types of proposals, talk about the wide range of institutions that have been funded through this grant program, and then some particular examples of funded projects.
So you might be wondering, what kinds of projects have we seen in making our awards for this program? The answer is a very wide range, combining fields across all areas of the humanities with those outside of them. Here are some examples of areas the Humanities Connections grants have focused on. This is by no means the only possibilities. There are medical humanities, science, technology, and society, business or entrepreneurship and the humanities, ethics and the professions, digital humanities, environmental humanities, engaged citizenship, and place-based initiatives. And we can't wait to see what you can come up with next.
We also wanted to draw your attention to the fact that a wide range of institutions have been successful in receiving Humanities Connections grants. So this includes large research universities, also 2- and 4-year community colleges, polytechnical schools, state and regional public universities, and actually a fairly long list of small liberal arts colleges, some in urban contexts and others in rural locations. As well as presidentially designated colleges. In this case, for Humanities Connections, we have funded a project at one of the tribal colleges. So we encourage you to think about your own institutional context, the interests and needs of your students, the interests and particular expertise of your faculty colleagues, and your geographic region and location as you begin imagining a project that might be funded through a Humanities Connections grant. So our first example comes from a small college in Huntington, Pennsylvania, where the total enrollment is approximately 1,200 students. The team at Juniata College wanted to explore the significance of the local rural community and think broadly about rural experience. So with a planning grant, they were able to develop several avenues, all with an eye toward a distinctive new minor for their students. And so this project is featured on the NEH website where you can read the fuller narrative from their successful grant application. And there's a list here of the activities that their planning grant supported. Here's a second example from 2018 of a planning grant. It's also one of the samples on the webpage, so you can take a closer look if you're interested. This one is from the University of Dayton, an urban, mid-sized Catholic university. They have materials and a sort of a local history there tied to Paul Laurence Dunbar. And this was the project description that they offered. The University of Dayton and its community partners seek support from NEH to develop new curriculum and place-based experiential learning opportunities for undergraduate students from all backgrounds around the theme of Paul Laurence Dunbar, the Dayton native and preeminent African-American writer. Our goal is to facilitate the development of a set of related courses that can explore the breadth of Dunbar's life, context, works, and influence. These include courses for majors in computer science and sociology that will incorporate significant humanities subject material, pedagogy, and habits of inquiry, as well as humanities courses that will integrate computer science and sociology. University of Dayton will introduce digital humanities tools and methods of inquiry to students and educators as a means of broadening engagement with material culture. And the project will also develop new experiential learning opportunities that make use of Dayton's rich collection of Dunbar material objects and artifacts. So you can see in this example how they were able to kind of focus on an area of interest and strength that they had there, in particular in Dayton, and then weave together some different grant activities to support it. Here's another example of, in this case, an implementation project. This was also from 2018, and it's from a large career-oriented public community college in New York City, the Fashion Institute of Technology, or FIT, which serves approximately 10,000 students. So in this case, they wanted to bring together business and labor history for their fashion students. And here's how they described their project. Through a partnership among history faculty and art and design faculty, this grant program will develop curricula intended to educate students about the business and labor history of the art and design professions. Content will explore how this history impacts present-day industry, careers, and professional decision-making. Key project elements will include art and design faculty, professional development conducted by history professors, collaborative curricular development, 2 conferences, and the creation of a resource website. The initiative addresses an expressed need from art and design faculty and students for a more complete understanding of the historical influences that have shaped art and design business management, the creative process, technology, and production. The initiative will help ensure that art and design students are well equipped for professional demands of the 21st century. So you can see in this example how they met a need for their students and brought together faculty from some of the different humanities and non-humanities disciplines there. Finally, here's an example from Georgetown University, which has received both a planning and implementation grant from us under the Humanities Connections grant rubric. And this was one of the early medical humanities programs funded through Humanities Connections. There's actually been a fair number now. And so you can see here that they used their grant monies to support a variety of activities tied to the minor. This is how they described their project. We aim to cultivate meaningful partnerships across campuses, equip students with a breadth of humanistic tools, contribute to scholarship in the field of medical humanities, enhance the well-being of pre-health students, and change the patient-clinician encounter from a grassroots level by shaping the training of healthcare professionals at a critical stage. So obviously at an institution like Georgetown, with a robust medical program, but they had the resources to do this. But this grant helped them specifically develop this program in a medical humanities minor, which if you go on their website, you can see is at this point thriving.
And next, we're going to move on to some specific information that you can find on the NEH webpage for Humanities Connections and some next steps in the process. On NEH.gov, within the program web pages, you can find the Humanities Connections grant resource page. Here's where you can find a general description of the grant program, important dates to keep in mind, and other helpful information as you develop your application. Farther down, also to be found on the program resource page, is the most important document that you will need to work on your application, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. You can find the NOFO along with other helpful materials under Step 1, Review Your Application Package. Here, you can also access the grants.gov package where you'll ultimately submit your applications. We also have FAQs and links to lists of recently funded projects in the Humanities Connections program. And then finally, we have a list of the sample application narratives, some of which Hannah just covered, and some we didn't. And you can find those, which are examples of well-written applications that can serve as resources as you write your own application. Please note that some of the samples are not complete applications and may contain references to previous requirements that have changed for new notices of funding. As you develop your project idea and your application, you may find that you have questions or need clarification. You can always reach out to us at any time through the program email address, which is hc@neh.gov. There's a real person monitoring that inbox. It's usually me. We also highly encourage applicants to take advantage of our draft review process. We will review any materials that you have, whether it be a complete draft, partial narrative, or just a sketch of your idea.
And actually, I'll add here that for program officers, this is one of the favorite things for many of us that we get to do, which is talk to you at early stages about your project, give you some feedback on an initial articulation of it, help you brainstorm. We enjoy getting to know you and your project early on. So please do take us up on this offer.
Absolutely. And then finally, if you submit an application that is ultimately not selected for funding, you can contact us to receive the peer reviewer comments for your proposal. And now we're going to quickly explain the eligibility requirements for the Humanities Connections Grant Program. So for this program, applicants must be an accredited U.S. institution of higher education, either public or private, with 501c3 status. This includes both 2- and 4-year institutions. Those who are not eligible to apply for this program include individuals, other federal entities, foreign and for-profit entities, and other eligibility information can be found in Section C of the Notice of Funding Opportunity.
Say a little bit more about the funding restrictions, because there are some things that this grant is prohibited from funding, and you can find a more complete list of the restrictions in Section D6 of the Notice of Funding. But I want to caution you against some of the most common pitfalls that we see. First, just some program-specific restrictions. So this has to do with how we've understood what the Humanities Connections grant is about, and then what it precludes. So what we will not fund is just the addition or revision of a single course offering. And that's because this is really meant to be sort of collaborative and sort of bigger than that. We also, under Humanities Connections, will not fund just the simple pairing of complementary courses. And this is because we're looking for truly substantive and purposeful interdisciplinary integration in the review criteria. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the next webinar, but this is really what Humanities Connections is about, is the substantive and purposeful interdisciplinary integration. And so this has to do with sort of scale and depth. We do not fund in this grant program faculty or student travel abroad. And then we also do not fund the cost for social events. And as a federal entity, you cannot charge alcohol to a federal budget. But let's just kind of focus on a few more things. The NEH cannot fund the promotion of particular political, religious, or ideological points of view, advocacy for a particular program of social or political action, or support of specific public policies or legislation. So what are the best antidotes to this? One, you want to include diverse and varied voices, scholars, and sources, whatever your topic is. Second, you want to present participants with unbiased information and allow them to draw their own conclusions based on that information. And so your narrative should show that you've thought about that. You want to root contemporary real-world issues in the humanities, especially history, and you want to focus on that humanities content in your application. Remember, we're the NEH, the National Endowment for the Humanities. That's what we're looking for. It's also good to avoid buzzwords, language, and any goals related to advocacy and activism, especially for hot topic issues, because that is specifically prohibited in the notice of funding. So remember that what you might see as humanities scholarship, a reviewer of your application might see as advocating for a particular cause. So you want to be thinking about that. And being aware of these differing viewpoints, you can hopefully build a stronger application that readers from any background or perspective will agree is a good fit for this grant program. And even in this kind of cross-disciplinary grant program, the NEH cannot fund projects that are outside of the humanities. And we most often see this with projects where the central focus is the creation or performance of art, such as participants producing creative writing, autobiographies, memoirs, or creative nonfiction. We also sometimes see this with projects with outcomes focused on the non-humanistic or quantitative social sciences, such as those that deal with social science research or policy studies. Collaborating across boundaries is great, but if these sorts of areas are your project's main thrust, you may want to be looking at the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, or the NSF, or to nonprofits that support that kind of work rather than the NEH.
And to learn more and for next steps, check out the second webinar, which will also be posted to the program resource page. Attend the live Q&A session that we will be holding on June 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you have any questions about the program, you can email us at hc@neh.gov. And if you have questions about administrative requirements, allowable costs, or any other questions as you're working on your budget documentation, you can contact grantmanagement@neh.gov.
So we thank you very much for watching this video. We hope it gave you a sense of what Humanities Connections is about and also a sense of the people behind this. If you call us or you email, a real human being will answer. If you want to learn more about what's involved in applying to this grant program, you'll want to view our second webinar, which is going to include more details about the application process, as well as some strategies and tips for putting together a strong application. And you can also always email or call myself or Sarah or really any program officer in the Division of Education to learn more about this grant. So thank you for your interest in the Humanities Connections Grant Program, and we hope to hear from you.